Good morning, everyone. In a few moments, one of your classmates, Sam Cahill-Farella, will come up to share a reflection on how he, as a Christian, feels called to be an ally with the marginalized communities, and more specifically, combat racism with people of color. This summer, Sam was one of 20 students who met with me for our first free anti-racist enrichment course called How Race Helped Shape America. In the course, we learned about how racist policies such as redlining contributed to many of the racial inequalities that we see in our world today. It was a pleasure to hear Sam and his fellow students share, learn, sharing some solutions that they had to reconcile some of these inequalities. And it's a pleasure for me now to introduce Sam as he shares a part of his story. So without further ado, please get your hands together for Sam Cahill-Farella.
Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. For those that don't know me, my name is Sam Cahill-Farella, and I'm a sophomore here at Catholic Memorial. This past year has been, without a doubt, the strangest 12 months I've ever experienced. We have seen, most notably, a global pandemic that we continue to struggle against, a presidential election that divided our nation, and a racial reckoning that firmly declared once and for all that Black lives do matter. In the words of former President Barack Obama, no more, but no less. I'm speaking with you today to inspire you in some capacity, to widen your perspective and engage in discussion with others to learn more about the harsh reality of racism that occurs in our country and in our world. Today, in the midst of Black History Month, I want to talk about my personal encounters with the heavy topic of racism in our lives, and how having difficult conversations about racial injustice has made me a better person, a better brother for my siblings, a better student for my teachers, a better Christian for my faith, and a better advocate for the Black community who is faced with the challenges of racism every day. I want to begin by describing my personal starting point surrounding racism before 2020. I come from a rare position in terms of my family background. My ethnic roots reside entirely in Europe with an Irish mother and an Italian father. However, after my father was born to my two white biological grandparents, my grandpa ended up remarrying a Black woman, technically my step-grandmother, named Cahill-Farella, who I would know as my closest grandma for the better part of my life. They had 4 children whom I am extremely close with, my Aunt Rebecca and my 3 uncles, Jamie, Gavin, and Christian. They are biracial and all live in New York, where my immediate family hopes to see them soon after the danger of the pandemic is finally over. My grandparents both passed away in 2019, but their legacy lives on through my aunts, uncles, father, and me, along with my 6 siblings. I want to be very clear. These are not just relatives of mine who happen to be Black. These are the people that I look up to and admire, the family that pushes me to be better and strive for greatness every day of my life. As you can imagine, having relatives that are people of color as a white person has made a tremendous impact on me from a young age. I am blessed with this diversity within my own family, and I see it not as something unusual, but as something to be treasured, protected, and above all, proud of. As a result, I've always had a very strong and emotional connection to issues involving racism, and felt immense gratitude that I'm lucky enough to have people in my life that can broaden my horizons. This all being said, I want to set the stage with the summer of 2020. As you all know, the Black Lives Matter movement initiated peaceful protests last year in response to several racially charged incidents throughout our country. These included the deaths of defenseless people of color such as Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and of course, George Floyd. These are names that previously held no meaning, but took on added significance because their tragic stories were broadcasted across the country. These are not easy topics. They are uncomfortable. They are hard to believe and hard to discuss. But they provided the spark for me and others across the country that cried out against racism and injustice. I'm grateful to have been a part of 2 of these demonstrations, and they made a profound impact on me as someone who had never experienced discrimination of any sort. I was given the opportunity to listen as people talked about the effects of racism on themselves and their family. In short, why it matters to speak up. And people and experiences like this are essential to expanding our bubble, understanding the very real threat of racism in the world today, and giving us a foundation to base difficult conversations on. As a white person, I'm not directly affected by any of the dangers of racism, so I could just sit back and decide not to talk about, research, or reflect on the massive issue that is racial inequality. However, it is these very conversations, whether it be here at school, on the internet, or at the dinner table at home, that provide an insight to my privilege, especially as it compares to the struggles of Black and other marginalized communities. Racism does not exist only in February of 2021. It is an ever-changing, unpredictably flaring, constantly evolving evil that can only be combated through making the effort to understand why it happens and what we can do to rise up against it, not just during Black History Month, but in our everyday lives. Conversations with my uncles and my experiences this past summer involving racial injustice are hard to take part in, but they encourage me to live in a better way. Maybe it's playing with my little brother after school. Maybe it's helping another student with their homework. Maybe it's letting my uncles, working at their barbecue restaurant in New York, know how much I appreciate them. Every time I take the opportunity to learn from someone who knows more than me, who has different experiences than me, no matter their race, is important and valuable in my life. CM has taught me that the little things matter, and my identity as a Christian is the piece that brings it all together. As a Christian, I can only imagine how Jesus would react if he were here today. In the gospel, Jesus intentionally sought out tax collectors and lepers to protect with his life. These were people on the outskirts of society, people who were seen as cursed and unclean, people who no one would even go near. And he extended a helping hand to them not as a savior, but as a friend. In Matthew chapter 20, verse 28, Jesus says, "The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." As Christians, we have a duty to uphold righteousness for those who have been shown injustice time and time again. This Christian part of me is obligated to help those who are suffering today, namely the Black community, not as a savior, but as a friend and an ally. That is the question which having difficult conversations helps me answer. How can I be a better ally? Furthermore, what role does my faith play in my decisions revolving around racism? How can I educate myself on what's going on in the world? How can I stand up with the people of color who are my brothers and sisters on earth? You don't have to be smart, confident, or a specific race to take a moment and recognize how racial injustice affects us as people and what you can do to work against it. I challenge all of us to take that one extra step, and in the words of the late Black Congressman John Lewis, to get in good trouble by talking about and finding solutions to racial inequality with the many people we all have so much to learn from. Thank you, gentlemen, and as always, with Jesus in our hearts forever.